Then we find out which of the brands best communicate those things. So say important things better is the mantra here.
Hey, today we're talking to Steve Lamoureux of Designalytics. They just released their special report that includes 9 brands that prove the insane business value of design. It includes some of the winners of the Designalytics Effectiveness Award. That includes Beardwood, Interact Boulder, ForceMajeure, Moxie Sozo, and a bunch of other agencies that are doing killer work. Now, these awards are different because they don't focus on the way the packaging looks, which is really weird. What they focus on, which is really smart, is the fact that these designs have actually increased the business of the brands that they're designing. Because some of the key trends they discover in terms of the research that they've done and some of the basics that you need to think about when you're designing for different categories. One point that I do want to make sure that you get, especially if you're a student or an instructor in a design program, reach out to Steve, who we're talking to today. Ask him for access into this platform. They're offering free access to schools and to students. And why this is important, why I'm super stoked about this is if you're a student and you want to work with an agency like a Moxie Sozo or a ForceMajeure, you can pick one of the brands that they've designed or pick a brand that they've worked with. You can redesign the packaging. You can put it through this Designalytics platform, see if your design would actually increase sales compared to what they have created. And if you want to work for a brand like a Hershey's, take some of their packaging, redesign it, run it through this platform. And if your stuff can increase sales by 30, 40, 50%, that's an in. That's how you get hired, right? Stop designing for aesthetics and start designing for sales. So make sure that you reach out to Steve. Make sure that you look at Designalytics, download the report that he's given access to. There's a ton of information in there. You gotta go. You gotta check it out. All the necessary links to do that are in the show notes in the description below. But do me a favor, before we get started in this episode, I want you to do me a favor, click the bell, hit the plus button, all the different buttons that you can do to subscribe, to rate, review. And if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment below with what brand you would want to do a redesign for. All right, let's get to the show. This is Steve Lamoureux with Designalytics.
So for anybody that's not familiar with Designalytics or hasn't seen any of the posts all over social media in terms of who's won and why they've won their packaging design awards, what is Designalytics?
Designalytics is a research company founded by an ex-brand manager that is solely focused on package design and its ability to drive sales growth. And so it's a natural extension of that to host the Design Effectiveness Awards in combination with the Die Line, where we can celebrate those brands that did do package redesigns that yielded incredible growth or turnaround of the brands. We have no panel of judges. It's not a subjective process, but rather we look at, is there evidence of success in the marketplace? And is there evidence of success in improving the design effectiveness? And that design effectiveness can work in many ways in the business process and through the marketing mix that results in those outcomes. So by elevating that and showing everybody that design's more impactful than perhaps they knew, then maybe they'll pay closer attention to the process they follow in order to experiment and iterate and land on a final design.
So if I'm a CPG brand and I want all of my packaging tested and reviewed, then you do that for a fee.
Yeah, well, exactly. We open our platform so people can learn from previous designs. We have hundreds of redesigns that occurred in the marketplace. So if you find yourself in a similar situation, you can use that reference data. But then when you start developing your own designs, you can also measure those with our platform.
Yeah. So what are you measuring?
Yeah, what we measure is consumers' response to design. And so that means we're bringing in hundreds of real consumers that buy that particular category. We expose them to fun exercises they can participate in. And based on their behaviors in those exercises, we know how to analyze that information in such a way that it's highly predictive of whether or not a new design is going to grow your business or potentially shrink it.
I'm redesigning yogurt packaging. You're going to take my existing packaging and you're going to put it up against the redesign direction. You're not going to put me up against competitors. It's my design versus my design.
Yes, but it depends on where you are in the process. So at the very beginning, you may not understand whether your package design is effective or not. And so the best way to do that is measure it against competitors and understand why some people like like your brand and purchase your brand, and other people don't and purchase the other brand. And so that could help inform the creative brief that, of course, the agency uses as their compass through the creative process. So that's one way they use this data. And then when the agency has some ideas, some hypotheses on how to answer that brief, we enable the quick measurement of those hypotheses so that there's, it's done early in the process. And even at the earliest stages of the process, you can predict whether that direction is going to result in positive business outcomes. So you can imagine how that is used throughout the process so that what you end up with is essentially a slam dunk, that this is something that is going to grow your business.
If I want to use your team effectively as a CPG brand, really, I'm bringing you in to look at my products, and you can almost tell me if I'm due for a redesign or if I've got something that's working, whether I love the design or not.
That's right. Even among our winners, there are some that aren't necessarily due for a redesign. Right? That's typically how people think about redesign. As a former brand manager, you'd be like, are we getting a little aged on the shelf? Is a competitor coming along, a challenger that's really redefining what the category looks like? Maybe I should react and do a redesign. Better yet, even if you have the top performing design in that category, it seems there's always more juice in that lemon if you know what you're doing. And so brands like Dove Men Plus Care, very effective design, very successful brand. I believe they're number one in the category or in the top three. By understanding what might be an opportunity for improvement and making those improvements, you can grow your sales. And it's certainly true of the other side of the equation where you're below average on a number of different performance dimensions for your brand. Yes. Knowing that helps create a much better creative brief. Better creative briefs get better creative, get better outcomes.
There's like this saying out there, right? If your design team's tired of the design that's out there, it's not time for a redesign, right? If your marketing team is tired of the design that's out there, it's not time for a redesign. If your accounts receivable is upset with the design, then it's probably time for a redesign, right? If you're not making money, then that's when you look at it, right? It doesn't matter what you think.
Yes, that's true. And I've heard it said several times on your podcast, right? What's unique about this industry is, yes, it's art, but it's also commerce. And so you're absolutely right. The ultimate judge of sales performance is the sales. That is the art connoisseur you're trying to convince are the people buying the toilet paper.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And all right. So like looking at some of the winners, right? We've got good pop. When you compare it to some of the other things that are out on the shelf, there's some things that are out there that are crushing it. But if I compare this design with the previous design, this is amazing, right? So again, you're comparing it against itself. When you compare it with other brands, like how does that inform the decisions in design? Like what exactly are you saying? Like, is it like color or logo or like what exactly are you providing?
Well, thinking about it from a manufacturer's perspective, doing better than you used to do with design will grow your sales. Yeah. So in a sense, mission accomplished, right? They were able to grow their sales. Whether that subjectively, objectively is great design is another matter. But you do raise a good question, which is, could it have been even better? That's true of any design endeavor. And one way you can do that is by measuring the old design against a key competitor, someone with similar positioning, maybe similar target audience. Do that with the old design and then measure the new design and see if you've in fact improved the outcomes there. One time I was giving a presentation, a guy came up to me and he shows me his business card. He says, okay, if design's so important, then how do you explain this? And he had his business card was from Tito's Vodka, right? And so Tito's Vodka, most art teachers would not pass that student. Let's just put it that way, right? Legend has it that the Tito's logo was a drop-down option in Microsoft Word. But what made it a successful design was that consumers were, fresh off this wave of craft beer and spending more money and wanting to buy smaller brewery products. And their positioning, and in fact, their less refined design, you think about the vodka space, extremely well refined designs in that space. They went in a different direction and they hit a nerve that was very successful. Today, Tito's is the number one spirit brand in America, not just the number one vodka brand, number one spirit brand. I don't think they have more than one product. I think it's still just one product in a bunch of different sizes. So it's always interesting to hear designers critique design and make assumptions, and very often consumers surprise us. Sometimes they disappoint us with what they value versus what we might value. Yeah. And so that's the goal, is to, at the end of the day, if you're in business to make a business, right, let's find out how we can leverage design to get more sales.
Okay. So as a designer,
this episode is brought to you by IDPDirect.com. They're the only packaging manufacturer that specializes in sustainable retail packaging made in their own factories. That means that you can avoid having to pay distributor markups. If you need to buy packaging, go check out IDPDirect.com. Links in the show notes. This episode is also brought to you by Specright.com. These guys are your packaging specification management platform. Why do you want this? Well, because it's going to streamline your packaging, purchasing, project management. It's also going to standardize all of your design processes. It's also going to manage all your documentation and a ton of other things. If you're already buying packaging, check out Specright.com.
Make amazing things.
Boom. And we're also brought to you by Packdora.com. These guys are amazing. You can log on to their website. You can type in the design, the style, the sizes of what packaging you want to make. It pumps out accurate die lines and 3D renderings. You can upload your artwork, get 3D renders. You can fold the entire box up and down. It does some really cool stuff. You can share it with your brands. You can share it with the factory to get pricing. It's super quick, super awesome. And I'm offering you a discount. Go to Packdora.com with Unboxed50, UNBOXD50, UNBOXD50 to get 50% off the annual subscription rate. You're not going to get a better deal. Check it out. I use them. You should use them too. And last, if you want to catch me live, I'll be speaking at Paris Packaging Week, January 25th and 26th. And I'll also be speaking at Packaging Premiere in Milan, May 16th through the 18th. All right, let's get back to the show.
Like, what am I learning from you? Like, I want specifics. Are you going to tell me, let's say Oikos, right? Before the Oikos redesign, if you were to look at the Oikos existing packaging, would the results you came back with would be like larger fruit, bolder colors? Like what are you giving me specifically? Like, how am I going to be successful here?
A couple of things that we look at first, and that is based on what is highly correlated with outcomes. Mm-hmm. So the first is very much a top line answer to the question: if both of these products were on the shelf at the same time, which would you rather purchase? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we do other things. We find out how long it took them to make that decision. We look at their commitment to buying that particular brand, because they don't have the whole shelf to choose from. They just have a couple of products. But the second question we ask is, why? Why did you choose this instead of the other? Whether it was the old design or whether it's a competitor, and vice versa. So the people that preferred the other product, why did you choose what you chose? And so you have hundreds of qualitative verbatim responses that you can look for clues as to why something's working, why it's not working, how it might work better. Mm-hmm. In the case of Oikos, it's been a year since I took a look at the data, but the trend, since you're asking about trend, the trend is that in food category, one of the most important things, almost any category you look at in the food space, when you try to get at what drives purchases, and we do that, we do separate non-design research to understand what is important to consumers in each category. And then we find out which of the brands best communicate those things. So say important things better is the mantra here. In the case of food, number one is always taste great, right? There might be a rare occasion where that's not the number one decider of what people purchase. So showcasing the fruit. Now, if you look at the old design, I don't believe there was any fruit. There's no visual reference to the ingredients or the flavor or the taste, the experience. The new design, there a lot of things are happening there. And Beardwood did an amazing job with that. If we're looking for trends, where have I seen something they did also work for other brands? It was really in getting close up to that fruit and making it look delicious and giving people the impression of what this product is going to deliver to them. At the end of the day, we buy products because they're going to create a benefit or solve a problem. Yeah. In this case, it's about taste.
What's the thread that you're seeing across all the different industries that you're like, I can't believe this is what customers want, which is completely different from what designers are thinking?
So you're really talking about two different trends there, right? So one trend is how are people designing things? And there's a very clear trend toward minimalism and clean packaging and larger logos and more of a fraternity of the brand, if you will, a celebration of the logo or its colors or that sort of thing, which has some benefits to it. Creating large color blocks on the shelf will get some attention, but a lot of times the brands that are using that type of a strategy don't suffer for attention. They already have 40% of the shelf. It's most interesting to me when that happens, when a certain design happens and it gets celebrated in the industry, and then it becomes part of other people's mood boards, and then begets more packaging that looks like that. When we look at how consumers respond to it, it is not what you might expect. In some cases, it may work well, especially if the old design was particularly cluttered or old-fashioned looking and that sort of thing. But a lot of times I'm hearing brand managers talk about, our goal was to be more modern. And being more modern, almost by definition, is following a current trend. And without consideration to what that's doing to people's perceptions of this product. And again, they're spending their money to solve a problem and get a benefit. And if that's not really getting them the benefit, if calling out their allegiance to a brand is not in the top 50 reasons why they buy a product, then really you could actually take something off the package design. It doesn't matter. I'll take the reverse of that. So if you look at the Archer, you mentioned the Archer brand of jerky. Well, 100% grass-fed beef was a claim on the old package design. It was right there. It was pointing at the window. You could see the product. It's a fairly prominent claim as claims go. They turned that into the name of the product. It's a great design, and it used, a pop of color, and, it probably did a whole bunch of things that helped with getting attention or being found or enticing, multiple purchases within the line based on flavor. But one of the big things that we saw in the research, what people were saying was, oh, well, that one is grass-fed. Even though they both say grass-fed, there's nothing like putting a benefit in or an attribute in the product name itself. Right? Walmart great value always wins on is a good value. Right? It's the name of the brand. So those are a couple of trends that are out there. If you're in food, it's usually a mistake to take food off the package, right? Whether it's the ingredient story or food. Sometimes we've seen Bon and Viv hard seltzers, a really interesting case study if anyone ever wanted to dig into it. This is a brand that launched a rocket ship. Right. Hard seltzer wasn't a thing until Bon and Viv, it was originally called Spiked Seltzer, created the category that became the behemoth that it is today. And at some point they had switched from showing either photorealistic illustrations or pictures of real fruit to a really cool looking, from a design perspective, a cool looking kind of a wood carvy approach to showing that fruit on the package design. And consumers just rejected it. They preferred to have a good idea what this experience is going to be like. And so that redesign, even though the category was growing 300% in the year of that redesign, they saw their sales go down.
Don't you expect to see a drop on a redesign just from a consumer confusion? How long do you test it if you're like, all right, this is really not working?
Yeah, so we go 6 months. So for the awards and just for our own validation that we're doing things correctly, we wait 6 months. And that's it's for a couple of factors. And what you describe is a fairly commonly held belief that, at first it'll go down and then it'll rise to higher levels. I haven't necessarily seen that. Now, admittedly, I'm not looking at it on a month-to-month basis.
Sure.
There's actually, most redesign launches are a soft launch. And so it could take a month or more for the old product to leave the shelf and the new one to show up. So even if that were to be the case, it would probably be diluted to the point where you can't really detect it. So
you're saying that's BS. Right.
Well, I'm saying I haven't seen evidence of it. I'm not looking that closely to it. I don't doubt it, but that is the reason, because that exists. That's the reason why we wait 6 months, because you would assume that by then, things would get better. What we do measure, by the way, is very often it takes a little bit longer to find a new package. In our research, it's the first time they're ever seeing that package. There's no ads that preceded that research. Right. There's no, pre-exposure at all. And we see half a second, maybe even a full second to find that product in a crowded set. But because we get the sales data 6 months later, what we realize is that delay in finding the product, which is often attributed to that, this theoretical dip in sales, that there's, at least at the 6-month mark, there's no correlation whatsoever between find time and business results, up or down business results. So think about, if anyone in the audience has ever done research and set action standards, if you've ever included, hey, you can't take any longer to find this package design. That's really important to us. Yeah. It turns out that's actually not that related to outcomes. And then there's another myth out there, which is the myth of familiarity, right? And so that is, the saying goes that consumers prefer things that are comfortable and familiar to them. And that's why redesign has that. It's another hypothesis of why there might be a dip, if there's a dip at all. And that's something that we can speak to. We see that, in fact, if you're testing a new design and it's not that effective, you'll see a common reason for not choosing that, for sticking with the old design, is it's what I'm familiar with. It's what I bought for years. It's what I grew up with. All these, and they all get coded as familiarity. You come back for another round and suddenly you solve the creative exercise better, and you show a package design that is creating more purchase preference for it. It disappears from even the reasons why people are choosing the design that they choose. So familiarity is the way I think about it, it's kind of a polite thing to say, right? Oh, that's great. Nice new design and all that. But, I'm more comfortable with it. And what they're really saying is, you're not giving me a reason to want to buy this new package design.
I mean, I'm a mayonnaise consumer, right? I grew up on the East Coast, going to A&P and getting Hellman's, right? Getting Best Foods, right? That like clear section of the mayonnaise, the yellow band with the blue. The blue lid, like when you open it, that smell, and there's like a little point of mayonnaise at the top. Like that's like ingrained in me from a kid. Like that's the only mayonnaise I'll buy. They've gone, I still go to the shelf. I'll buy it today, and it feels, there's that familiarity. It feels the same as when I was like 5 years old. But if I look at those two designs, they're completely different. They've been redesigned, it feels like hundreds of times, but they're so connected that it doesn't lose me. Now they've launched, like avocado and all these different versions of it, color changes. It doesn't feel the same. Like I'm not reaching for those as much as I am with these. There's a ton of those products that are out there that go through redesign after redesign, but they don't change so much because there's just so much heritage, I guess you'd say, for mayonnaise. But like there's that built in. How would you measure something like that? Like we try to push design further and then say, okay, we got to pull it back.
It's case sensitive, which is to say, if you're a relatively unknown brand, if you're not Hellman's, then you need to do something different, right? You need to do something better. You need to peel away those consumers from the brands that they've been buying since childhood. If you're relatively unknown, you don't have, what's called equity. You don't have experience. You don't have, years of television commercials that you watched on Saturday morning.
Right.
You have, you just have a design, really. And what the design represents, it's representing the product that's inside and is making an attempt to, present a case for you purchasing that product instead of another one. As it relates, so that's one case is the unknown brand. You know what? All the gloves are off. If you think about that continuum of evolutionary, revolutionary, check all the points of the compass and do that with something that is highly predictive. And that's essentially the problem we're trying to solve. And then you'll find out, how far is too far. In that case, there is no too far. We've done plenty of challenger brand research where no one's really heard of the brand and they're certainly not going to buy that product. And so you have the freedom to do more things. And then we have other brands that, for example, Coca-Cola, have a prop right here. So Coca-Cola did a great thing. They figured out how to use a 100% recycled bottle. And that means a lot to a brand manager and to a company, and there's all kinds of corporate priorities to do this sort of thing. But when that becomes the top of your communication hierarchy, it can present unintended issues with consumers. And for the Coke consumer, they really value that brand. That's one where the brand experience is part and parcel to what they're paying for. And so if you might be doing a great thing and altering a label, but if it has this unintended consequence of, is that my regular Coke? Is that, right. Or is that Coke Zero? I bought the wrong product once and I don't want to do that again. I'm not sure. And creating that dissonance at the point of sale could be problematic, even though they all appreciate and value what the company's trying to do. You read through the verbatims. No one's saying, screw the oceans. I'd rather have my Coke back. They're concerned about making a mistake, buying the wrong product. Is this really the same product?
100%. No, I know going in, I know when I'm running into like a gas station, I just open up the fridge and I just grab the Coke because I can see it and I identify it. I've got a bottle behind my computer here. It's actually a Coke space flavor or something. And that was, I haven't opened it, but I ran to the gas station. Yeah, exactly. And I told my kid, hey, just grab me a Coke. And, she's 9 years old. She doesn't have the whole branding built in. She grabbed the Coke that was cute to her. And we paid for it, got in the car. And I'm like, what on earth is this? Like, I'm not even going to open it because I can't imagine what it's going to taste like. But, it's the same thing with that 100%, right? It's like you look at it and it's like that muscle memory. And if anything interferes with that muscle memory in terms of like the purchase, that second is a split second that you could lose a sale. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, no, that's interesting. You've got something in here. It says some of our clients this is from Fred Hart over at Interact, I believe. Some of our clients are afraid to take the risk. As an entrepreneur, you've already taken a massive amount of risk. So why are you stopping when it comes to creative? Great feedback from Fred. It's like people are really afraid in terms of brands to push things too far. And what you guys are doing is amazing, right? So there's a ton of design awards out there. I've been a judge on pretty much all of them at this point. But it always feels like as a judge, you're looking at it for color and hierarchy and design, aesthetics, taste level, but we never look at it from a pricing standpoint, from a business standpoint. Did it actually move the needle in terms of sales? So like this award seems really, really important. Like this is the award of all awards.
In Europe, the DBA does something like this. It's something, that we very much wanted to echo in the US, because it is a business and businesses need great designers. They need great strategy. But at the end of the day, you don't want to be guessing whether or not those design decisions you're making or even strategic decisions you're making are going to come back and bite you, despite all your best intentions and skill and everything else. And so, thank you. As an award, we think it's actually pretty important, particularly in this business. Which isn't to say that, great design isn't potentially a source of growth as well. But that's the beauty of, experimenting. Like there's just not enough experimentation in this industry. You have, agencies that may have great ideas and very broad ideas of how to respond to a brief. And then to your point, there's a fearful client. There's a lot at risk. You literally could end your career as a brand manager by green lighting, a product that loses 20% of sales in 6 months. And so the fear is driving things. Well, it's like 12 years now. I think it'll always come to mind. The funny thing about that, the unique thing about our business is we're measuring designs not because the client's paying us, but because it happened. And it happened in a category that we're tracking with a brand that we're tracking. So truth be told, there's a lot of Tropicanas. They just don't reach the public consciousness. In part, it's because the industry hasn't been that great at measuring and attributing outcomes to design changes, right? There's a lot of convenient, suspects. Well, the pricing, the COVID, the supply chain, the comms, there's all kinds of other factors. Absolutely, 100%. But the truth is that if you think about it, package design affects all of those other things. Right, let's take the number one driver of sales, distribution. If I get onto the Walmart shelf, I'm going to sell more product. No doubt about it. How do you get that distribution? Well, if you have a compelling package design that's saying something new and different, something important to the consumers that are purchasing it, the buyer knows that, right? They'll sense that. You may even have evidence that is the case. And that can get you distribution at Walmart. So package design is not this weird, isolated factor among many, many factors. It is actually an underlying factor across everything. Because what is a brand in CPG if it's not the package? When's the last time you saw a Super Bowl ad for a CPG product that didn't show the package? My favorite Super Bowl ad this year was Liquid Death. I probably have it in my back here. It was brilliant. And it was like 50% of the commercial had, close-ups of the package. Like the package was telling something compelling and unique in the category. It's relax, it's just water. To disregard the role of package design in advertising and getting distribution and Instagram posts and, what the influencer has to work with, to do their job. It's so fundamental. And it's funny that the industry often says, well, no, it's just this one thing. And plus or minus 1% is probably what you could expect from that. When in fact, the scared brand manager should be scared because it could be a negative 20%. But the smart brand manager who's knows what tools to use in order to predict those outcomes is going to embrace that.
With Good Pop, when you put those two guys side by side, it's a huge difference. Like one, the orange and cream was just like a white box with just a regular product photography and an orange logo. Like there's so many changes. Now, when you look at the new one, the product has gotten actually larger. Like the physical product has gotten larger. The photography has gotten larger. There's more color. The Good Pop is like this turquoise with an orange in front of it. And all of a sudden it screams off the shelf. So it's like it's easily recognizable and it doesn't feel generic. So it makes a huge difference, right? Did they bring you in before, like through the process, or is this something that you checked that you did as part of the awards after the fact?
Yeah, it's not a prerequisite for the awards for it to be something that we worked on. I'd say a good portion of them come from our measuring what changed in the marketplace without our involvement, and happened to be a really good example of design that drives growth. And hopefully someday most of those actually came through our system because it increases the likelihood that you'll have that out. In the case of Good Pop, no, but in the case of Fred and Interact, yes. And one of the things I wanted to say, it's judging design, the outcome of design. Especially if you're young and you haven't been through the process, you're out of design school, you may not realize all of the strategies and imperatives and compromises that needed to be made because the Walmart buyer said this and the brand director said that, or that, they've identified that the problem is, we could do a lot with color and we can, own a whole palette of colors and we're going to own the shelf of this big color thing. Well, it's Good Pop. They don't have the whole shelf, right? They're a new brand. They're expanding on the shelf. And so I don't know. And people evaluating the design may not realize, the complexity of the problem that's being solved. There's not a design that everyone's going to love. And so the question is this design going to be loved by more people than not? And if you can increase the percentage of people that maybe not love the design, but would certainly pay money for something that they think is going to solve their problem, just incrementally enlarging that group each time is a solid way to grow your business.
So you talk about, kind of designing for designers in terms of like the way that we design based on the terminology, the brief, everything kind of that we're moving towards. What kind of a budget am I looking at to bring you in at that level, right? Are we talking thousands, tens of thousands?
We like to think it's pretty affordable, given the outcome that you get, but I'll just put some parameters around it. So, testing in the middle of the process is very cost effective because we leverage technology. We don't have consultants on staff. We're all experts in figuring out how to bring consumers into the mix and understand their behavior and what that means toward an outcome. But that's something that once you figure that out, once you crack that code, now it's just the technology taking over. The technology that creates those interactions with consumers and then analyzes their behavior. And so that keeps prices actually pretty low. Now, there's a lot of cheap research out there. That's not this. There's, for a period of time, it was all about quick and dirty research, right? Hey, I can get an answer in an hour. Well, is the answer on Friday going to be the same answer you get on a Monday? Like people's mind frames are a little bit different there.
Yeah.
So rather what this is starting with the end in mind, very much this whole idea of design drives growth. Okay, well, what grew and what didn't grow? And so how do you crack that code? Now that you crack the code, it's actually pretty low cost in order to incorporate it into your design process. So in that scenario you described, Let's say it's early in the process and I want to test 4 different designs, first reaction to the design brief. And I'm doing this, I'm testing to learn, rather than testing to win. And you find out which of those 4 very different directions are getting you to where you need to be the best. Mm-hmm. And then you take, all the qualitative learning from that and you apply it. So, at full price, it's $3,200 per item there. So it's about $13,000 to test 4 different designs. But from that, now you can have a second round where you can take maybe the strongest design and iterate off of it. So maybe there's 3 versions of the strongest design, or maybe there's 2 designs that you're iterating off of. So let's say you do another round of 4. So now you're up at about $26,000. You tested 8 designs. But here's the thing, that from that, we've done this plenty of times. That first round of testing, the average score is in our bottom 30% of the database. Why? Because you're testing to learn. You're taking some big bets here, but you're not spending a lot of money. So why not? It turns out, putting a skull on a package design of, a can of water didn't turn out to be such a bad idea. So $26,000, 2 rounds of this. And now in the second round, the average score is in the top 10% of our most predictive measures for growth. So that tells you that, and we're not the heroes here. We're just bringing consumers into the middle of the process in a predictable way. And it's smart designers that learn from round 1, people like the folks at Interact, that, can turn that second round into, okay, we got a killer direction now. Sometimes the times that doesn't happen, going from bottom 30 to the top 10, interestingly, is finding out that the brief's wrong, right? So a brief contains a lot of assumptions. A lot of times those are subjective assumptions from the brand manager. And so there's nothing better than very early research to say, no matter what we tried, they all failed miserably. Stick with the current design. Well, that's not really the answer. The answer is, we made some assumptions that aren't panning out. Let's go back. Let's have the client go back and take a fresh look at those assumptions. And now with a new brief, now suddenly you do north, south, east, and west, and you're seeing a couple directions have a lot of promise. And then, you're solving this problem long before what you would normally do is get to the very end of the process. You'd probably still end up with a parity score, which is all you needed. You launch a product and then, and then you have another quiet Tropicana on your hands. So, $26,000, it's not, that's pretty low in comparison to, other research that's not been validated to show growth. And it's certainly low compared to, on average, when we do this on a syndicated basis, about 35% of designs, you reach a level of improvement on the purchase measure, that they're 96% likely to grow the business after the fact. That's only 35% of the time. 46% of the time, actually, you're making things worse. You didn't intend to, but it happened. Right. So if you look at the 35% that did do better, given the types of brands that we're tracking, the impact in 1 year of sales is it's roughly $15 million. Wow. And then on the 46% of the side, the average loss is $9.5 million. So when you're talking about those kinds of outcomes and being 96% certain it's going to be the former, not the latter, right? Yeah, that $15 million covers the $26,000 you spent.
Yeah, handsomely.
Yeah.
Here's what I've learned so far. 1, if you're doing food packaging, put food on it, right? And I look at Good Pop again, and from the old design to the new design, they've got actual fruit on the packaging, which they didn't have before, which goes back to the Oiko's big, bold color of fruit. And one thing I do notice on the fruit is that the fruit color has been the fruit and the popsicle, which Good Pop is a popsicle. It's orange and watermelon. The orange one actually matches in color with the oranges. Right. So it makes that connection, like, wow, this flavor's there. Same thing with the watermelon one. It matches in color. So if you're doing food packaging, have food on it, focus on flavor. If you are going down the path of, minimalism and, some of these trends that some of these larger brands are doing that already own the entire shelf space, maybe you shouldn't, right? Like really focus on differentiating from them, because they can do minimalist because people already know them and they own the entire shelf space. If you're going to be a challenger, don't follow trends. That's the whole point of being a challenger. And measuring the back end of sales, like focusing on the business side of this. Obviously, we want beautiful design, but we want to make sure that it sells the product. Mm-hmm. So if you want to incorporate this type of data collection in your design process, it's not that expensive. It's really not that expensive, honestly. And to bring you in sooner versus later, right? We want to have you in the middle of the process to get all those learnings versus spending all that time to develop and strategize and design, have the customer fall in love with something to then test it and have you come back and say, this isn't going to work.
Yeah.
I still can't believe the cost of this. Like, honestly, this is really cheap when you consider the cost of bad design, or even not bad design, but design that doesn't resonate with a consumer.
Mm-hmm. Here's another thing to consider is the business of a design agency, right? Because there's benefits to them. So, folks like Fred and Interact, well, guess what their number one, cost line item is? It's design time, right? And so every agency knows that the more they're tweaking and extra rounds they didn't plan for, and then the brand manager just changed, and now we're on a whole new direction. That's costly to the agency. And so it's in the agency's best interest. We have a remarkably good relationship with agencies, which is unusual, as you could, it's kind of an odd couple, right? Yeah. Researchers and design. But we have a really good relationship because by using a low-cost tool early in the process, and frankly, some agencies actually use us on work that they haven't presented yet, right? Because they want to have that confidence going into that presentation of what is the strongest design and why is it working really well. Imagine that. But when you do that, you end up with a much more linear, creative process, the one that is fueled by your consumers, the target consumers. And that reduces the cost of design. And yet you could charge more because you're building a reputation for working on things that drive growth, $15 million of growth. It really is transformative, not only for the manufacturers, but also the agencies that, are willing to open their minds and embrace the idea that you can measure things. And I don't fault anyone who doesn't trust design research. This business exists because I was a brand manager who didn't trust design research, right? It wasn't measuring the right things. It wasn't believable if you really thought critically about it.
Yeah, it's not emotional, right? It's not sexy.
Not sexy, no.
Cool. So you guys do you do food packaging. You do cosmetics. Do you do what do you cover? Is it any kind of packaging?
In the mix there, yes, we have cosmetics, we have household cleaners, we have beverage alcohol is a huge one. Think about we mentioned Bon and Viv and Tito as well. Imagine how powerful the design needs to be in order to be successful in that business.
Yeah.
Clearly, food, all forms of food, frozen, non-frozen, etc. But we have a whole bunch. We have 12 different super categories, if you will, that we cover. So that means we already have data on those things. Yeah. Even before you get started, you can learn. You can even learn from what we learned about what matters to consumers. Right? A lot of times that's missing from the brief is, we want to drive modernity. But I don't think people are really spending money to be modern. What is driving consumer purchases? And shouldn't that be in the brief? Also, all those kinds of things, already exist. They're sitting on a shelf, ready for you to leverage.
If you're a young designer, it's really about showcasing and flexing all of your creative muscle. And like you said, sometimes you don't get all the benefits of that experience. But as we start wrapping up here, one, I want to thank you for your time. This is super amazing. Agencies out there, submit to all the awards shows, but definitely submit to this, right? Because as a brand owner, I would want to hire the agency that has a proven track record of growth, not of beautiful design. Mm-hmm. And those should be one and the same at some point.
You mentioned the young designer, and one of the things that another nonprofit area we participate in is we work with design schools. And so professors can set up projects where, pick an existing brand, get the report of how it's currently performing, create some new designs, put them through the Designalytics system, and so that students can learn from this idea of using consumer input and feedback to their designs in order to work that process. And it's remarkable how student work is now delivering designs that are 96% likely to grow the business. So it's something that we're really excited about. So if anyone out there runs this kind of a program at a design school, give us a call. We're happy to expand that to anyone who wants to do it. There's not really any cost involved.
As a design student, if I can pick up a product and get the data, design to it, and show a 96% growth success rate, I'm picking the products of the brands that I want to work with. Mm-hmm. I'm designing that. I'm reaching out to their marketing people and saying, hey, I just came up with this concept. Here's how it's going to grow. When can I schedule an interview? Right.
Exactly. Right.
I mean, you got to be selfish. Like, how is this going to serve me?
Oh yeah.
How can I help? Help me help you.
Imagine that in your portfolio. Exactly. Looking to land a job.
Yeah.
And imagine the agency that's hiring this person who's had that experience of checking their ego and just, trusting that the people you're designing for know what they want to buy.
100%. Last thing here is all right. So one of the things I've been doing a lot of is working in AI, designing packaging in AI. The speed at which you're able to create at the moment, in the last week, I've designed thousands of pack designs for food, alcohol, cosmetics, like just the most random stuff. And really kind of drill down visual and, on some of the food packaging, there's like big food. So on some of it's like super minimals, like, kind of going down this list of design potential in combination with the Designalytics. This seems like it could be a really great marriage of refining the brief and finding direction, right? Where, I can pick up my oikos, my product, I can photograph it, I can throw it into AI, and then I can start putting in keywords from the brief, things that people are reacting to, have it generate, 4 or 5 different directions that are agreeable to me visually and seem to hit all these buttons. And I can present, share those with you. Like I could put that together in an hour and I can run that by your team to then come back with feedback. And as it kind of narrows it down, again, it's like, how do you cut down design time to find the right direction? I mean, what's happening in AI is insane, but there's no data behind it. It's like, how do you pair that with data to then make better decisions?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. With my understanding of AI, and we use a little bit of AI in our business, but not to determine a good design or a bad design. AI, machine learning, is exactly that. It's an algorithm that needs to learn from high quality data. And what you're describing sounds like AI applied to the creative exploration process, which is amazing. And I could see a day where we plug in our 200 consumers and what they say on why they wanted to buy one or the other, and then being able to use that as the input to make those refinements. I mean, that feature is probably not that far away. But the important thing is learning from high quality data. So if we have a tool that we know to be predictive of outcomes, like what better source for a machine to learn from? So it's not that futuristic, it seems, anymore, right?
No, not at all. So if anybody wants to learn more about Designalytics, what's the best place for them to find out and contact you?
Designalytics.com.
All right, guys, show's over. I appreciate it. Like I said, leave a review, subscribe, do all the good stuff. And like my buddies over at Specright say,
It's time to take control.
Boom, out.